Well, good evening. I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to say thank you to each and every one of you for making it here tonight for our open house. This is a great opportunity for you as potential employees for the City of Wheat Ridge to ask questions, get to talk one-on-one with our panel, and get anything answered that you would like to know about a career in law enforcement. So what we're going to do is this tonight will be a panel discussion that you will have about an hour opportunity to ask anybody up here on the panel a question. And we have devised our panel to give a good realm of people in different stages throughout their career. We also have on the end Darren Slade. He is a spouse of an officer. His wife sitting next to him, Julia, just graduated the FTO program, so you will have a perspective from the spouse of a police officer who's also bringing up a child. Then we have Josephine Van Veen, who is currently in our field training program, who just graduated the academy, so you'll have the opportunity to ask questions from that standpoint. We have Community Services Officer Joss Bisrath, who applied as a police officer a year ago and did not successfully complete everything. He made it all the way to a chief's interview. However, with Mr. Bisrath, our chief saw such potential in him that we offered him a position with our community services team to give him that opportunity to gain some experience and knowledge, and he has applied now for this second rotation for a police officer recruit. So that's Josh. Then you have Sergeant Scott John Claus. He's been with the department 20 plus years, so you will get a perspective from some longevity. Next to him we have Alan Hernandez, who's been on the department under 5 years, so you will also get a different perspective. On my very end here is Detective Nellie Jasonda. Nellie actually came to us. She speaks French, so she is French, and has been with our department for 10 years, 8. And so you'll get a perspective of someone who has had children while being a police officer. So we have a large gamut here for you to ask your questions of. So I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce to you Police Chief Dan Brennan. Chief Brennan came on board with us back in 2005, so he's going on 14 years with the City of Wheat Ridge. So without further ado, here's Chief Dan Brennan.
So I'm not very good standing behind podiums, so I'm going to come out in the front and make sure that, she can Facebook me live here. So my name is Dan Brennan. I'm the police chief. I've been here 14 years. I've actually been in law enforcement going into my 42nd year in law enforcement. I started when I was 12 years old. No, I started right out of college. I am from Colorado. I went to Metro State. I got my degree in criminal justice and started shortly after graduating in 1977 and worked 27 years for the city of Lakewood. Rose to the rank of commander at that location. Knew that I wanted to be a police chief. Had tested with a couple of smaller mountain agencies, and the Wheat Ridge job opened up. I applied for it, and was fortunate enough to be selected and have been here ever since. So welcome to, this is our second candidate orientation session that we're having. We made some changes from last year's event that we saw some opportunities to make it even better, and that's partly one of the reasons why we have this panel. Wheat Ridge, for those that aren't as familiar with our community, is a medium-sized police department. So I oftentimes ask people, some people might say, well, you're really pretty small. You're only about 10 square miles and a population of about 32,000. But does anybody in the audience know the average size of a police department in the United States today? Anybody at all? Well, give me a guess. What would you think the average size would be? How many? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. So what would be your number? Average size. Just pick a number. 600. The average size of a police department in the United States is less than 10 people. So how many know how many law enforcement agencies exist in the United States today? Anybody? Okay, Commander Pinson over here can't answer any of these questions. I just saw you in the audience. But the average size of a department is less than 10. There are 17,500 law enforcement agencies in the United States when you look at local, county, and federal, state and federal law enforcement agencies. So Wheat Ridge is really, with 82 sworn officers, a good medium-sized police department. We are an inner-ring suburb, so Denver is to our west. We're surrounded by Lakewood and Arvada to our north, both larger communities. But our crime and the types of activities that we have in our community are very reflective of what you would see if you worked at Lakewood, if you worked at Aurora, or if you worked in Denver. The same kinds of issues. And being an inner-ring suburb, we sort of reflect what the issues are that are going on throughout the metro area. So our major issues are crime, property crimes, traffic issues. We have I-70 runs through our community. 4 state highways run through our community, so we have a lot of traffic issues, and then quality of life issues and stuff. So quality of life issues in regards to nuisance kinds of problems, and it's a future police recruit right there, I'm telling you. So we're very reflective of the community around us. Here's why I think you should come to Wheat Ridge, all right? It's the very same reasons that I came to Wheat Ridge. Opportunity, right? So you can come to this police department and do a lot of things that you couldn't do in a much larger organization. So largest organization in the United States, law enforcement organization, is what police departments? Anybody know? No. NYPD. LAPD is significantly smaller than New York, but it's right up there, in the top 10, right? So when you look at those dynamics, when you go to work in a bigger department, there are more jobs, so there might be more detective positions, there might be more traffic team positions, there might be more detective positions, but you're competing against a lot of other people to get there. In this particular agency, we have to do the same work that the bigger agencies do. Aurora, Denver, Lakewood, Arvada, we've got to do the same thing. We do that with 82 sworn personnel. So you get the opportunity to wear a lot of hats, all right? So we have officers here that have been here 3 or 4 years that not only are patrol officers, but they might be a crime scene investigator. They could be a skills instructor, so they could be certified to teach police officers how to shoot a gun, how to arrest somebody, be an arrest control instructor or a driving instructor. They could have the opportunity to be on our SWAT team. They could be in one of our special assignments, so they could be a member of our persons team, our property team, our traffic team, some of the various other teams that we have, and also have the opportunity to participate in a variety of different committees that are designed and developed to make this department an exceptional organization. How many of you have looked at our city the PD website at all, the police department website? Anybody? Okay. Does anybody remember our vision statement? Our vision statement is exceptional people providing exceptional service. So what does that mean? When you hear that, what resonates, all right? Here's what resonates with me, and this is why I'm so passionate about this place, right? We try to hire the very best people, right? Exceptional people. So we strive to hire the very best. We train people to be the very best. We hold people accountable to be the very best. And then we're driven to provide exceptional service. We don't want to provide the level of service that you might see in other communities. We want to go a step beyond that. We want people to remember the contact that they've had with the Wheat Ridge Police Department as being respectful, as being fair, having a sense of purpose. And that's what we really strive to do on a day-to-day basis. Now, we have our crime. We have issues with mental health. We have issues with homeless people. We have issues, with crime and criminals. And sometimes things get pretty hectic. I don't want to paint a picture that, we're, Pleasantville, right, and the perfect community. We're not. We have challenges in this community. But we've adopted a community policing philosophy, and that's one in which we strive to solve issues of crime, quality of life, and traffic in partnership with the law-abiding community members in our community. That's what we strive to do on a day-to-day basis, and arrest offenders, because that's part of what we do. We're driven to make this community safer and to do it in a way that embodies community policing and creates positive relationships with the law-abiding members of our community. So I can't tell you how just pleased and happy I am to see such a full audience out here and so many people. I can tell you, and some of my staff will probably agree to this and roll their eyes, I'm as passionate about police work 42 years after I started as the day I donned my badge on. It is a noble profession. It is, along with teachers, I think one of the noblest professions that we can have. And it's come under a lot of scrutiny, and some of that is fair, some of that is right. We need to do a better job as police officers in terms of developing trust within our community. We work really hard at it, but situations in policing oftentimes can be fluid, they can be dynamic, and they can be troublesome sometimes, and that's the nature of the job. But we always try, we have a philosophy here in any difficult situation that we have, that we always look at it and do a debrief on it, and we strive to become better. We always strive to become better based on situations that we encounter, because every day is a different day in law enforcement and a different way of dealing with things. So I've got this great panel back here, and I think you'll find them pretty entertaining and pretty responsive in regards to questions that you have. But I wanted just to take a quick minute and see if there were any questions that I could answer for you in regards to the process, what I might be looking for as a chief, anything that you wanted to ask me before I go to the back of the room and turn this over to somebody else. So, any questions from anybody in the audience? No? Let me just add one other caveat here really quick. Let me ask you as an audience, what is the most important value you think a police officer should have? Integrity. That's right. That is it, right? We can't do our job as law enforcement officers if we don't have integrity. So if you look at our core values, integrity is right at the top. Everything else that we have as a value in this organization is built upon that foundation of integrity. It's critical to fairness. It's critical to being honest. It's critical to being transparent with community members and even with ourselves. So thank you for that, because it is a very, very important trait. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is you'll notice up here, with this group of panelists, I have a strong desire to make our police department reflective of our community. So when I speak about reflective of our community, I'm talking about gender, I'm talking about age, I'm talking about race and ethnicity. It's really, really important for police departments to reflect that. Our department is comprised, I think our numbers are 20 or 21% of women. And I'm very proud of that, because that is a pretty high percentage compared to a lot of law enforcement agencies. We need to do better in terms of that, and we're really striving hard to bring in people of color. That's really, really important, because we need to reflect our community. And being a police officer and being a good police department requires a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different experiences. The bottom line is we've got to have people of integrity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Watson, and we'll open it up to the panel. But I hope you ask questions. That's the whole purpose of having you here today, is to ask any question. There's no question that is silly or stupid or anything, because somebody else in the audience is thinking the same thing. They're just afraid to ask. So show some courage. That's another one of our values, right? So thank you for being here. It was great meeting all of you. And if you have any questions about the process, Sergeant Watson, Miss Millie Lewis over here, that's deciding things, making hot chocolate. You know, you can ask her about the process as well. And then we also have some other officers, commanders, and some of our civilian positions here as well. All right, thanks again for being here.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll open it up to questions. I'll ask you just to raise your hand and I'll hand you the mic, and then you can just ask your question. You can either address it to anybody on the panel or it can just be a general question and anyone on the panel can answer. So there's... Okay. Sure. Okay. Let's start with Julia.
So, as Sergeant Watson said, I've recently completed the FTO program. I'm on probation for a little bit longer. And basically, I started here as a dispatcher and moved my way up to a police officer. And right now, my days are a bit hectic. I work the graveyard shift, so that can be challenging with this one at home. Thankful for the support that I have, but 10-hour days, each day is new and interesting. There's always some good story to come home with, and yeah, that's my day.
Whichever one you want to use, doesn't matter. Okay.
I think this works. Hello? Oh, never mind. Thank you. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have a team to help me out every day. So I'm in field training currently, so I graduated Police Academy on November 29th. From there, we are put into phases, so phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And basically how Wheat Ridge works is they really set you up for success. Every phase is designed to prepare you for the next. And basically you start with someone helping you out a lot, and slowly but surely they're going to set you free as a solo patrol officer. And so phase 1 through 4 is to prepare you to be by yourself on the streets once you're out of field training. I'm currently starting phase 3, so it's just about wrapping it up and going into the last couple weeks where it becomes really important to be independent, not have to ask as many questions, but let me tell you, even though, you know, it's kind of nerve-wracking and you're like, okay, they trust me with a car and I'm talking to people, and my, you know, my field trainer, which is, by the way, a different person for every phase. So you work with 3 different trainers. So, you know, somebody might not be your style and it might not, you know, mesh 100%, but they're in here to teach you, and then you take something from that regardless. And then the next person might be someone's personality that really mixes well with yours, and regardless of who they are, you learn so much from each independent field training officer in FTO. So they grade you every day based on your experiences throughout the day, so the calls that you handle and the way you hold yourself professionally, how you write your reports, and so forth. And you evaluate. They talk to you about it. They're not in it to trip you up or try to make you look like a fool at all. And that's something that I was very nervous about. I was like, I'm a rookie. You know, I'm going to make mistakes. And what is it going to look like when I make those mistakes? But within this department, as I said before, they want you to succeed, and which is very different from other departments. Some departments really put you through field training to see if you're going to fail. And I found with Wheat Ridge that here, you know, they've already invested this time in you, and you've already gone through the process and worked your way through academy. Now it's time to learn to become a police officer, and I'm incredibly lucky to be with this department that is going to set me up for success, and I'll feel completely ready, I think, in about 6 weeks to be on my own.
My name is Joshua Beesworth. I'm a community service officer for the Wheat Ridge Police Department. It's a non-sworn position, so we're not like these guys here who are on the road every day. We mainly deal with park code enforcement and animal control. Our secondary job is that we support patrol in any way, shape, or form. So any response that doesn't necessarily require a sworn peace officer to respond. So parking complaints, road hazards, things of that nature, we assist them in any way, shape, or form. Just like Sergeant Watson stated, once again, I was in the process to become an entry-level officer. I made it all the way to the final interview, but the chief decided not to take me. But they Just like she said again, they saw something within me that, hey, we want him here, just to give him some more experience. The one thing I can say about Wheat Ridge Police Department is if you make an opportunity, if you show them that you want to work, if you show them that you have the initiative and the drive to actually want to do this job, that they'll work with you. Another thing too is with being a community service officer, we're with our public's eye 24 hours. One thing that I love about being a community service officer is the responsibility that we have. We see people every single day. We vary from parking complaints to property line disputes, and sometimes we're like the middleman between both properties. And it could be the difference between having patrol come out and they have to maybe arrest someone, or we sit down with both property owners, we talk with them, and we find peaceful solutions. I think that's actually one of the goals of being in law enforcement is you're a critical thinker and you're a problem solver. So, and I think that's something that every single person here on this table exudes 110%. For every person here that's an applicant that's going to apply for being a patrol officer, if let's say for some reason you don't make the process and they do offer you to be a community service officer or any way, shape, or form be a part of this department, take it. I don't regret it one bit, not one bit at all. Everybody here that on this panel at one point in time has helped me in some way, shape, or form. I have a good commander over there, Commander Hunt. Hey, Barb, how you doing? I work with a great team. We're diverse, we're strong. There's no way, shape, or form any single person on this department is going to let you fail. The only way you're going to fail is if you fail yourself.
My name is Scott Junclaws. I've been a police officer for 26 years and been with this department for 24 years. They needed an old guy on the panel, so I volunteered. One thing I'd like to say about Wheat Ridge Police Department is the opportunities that they provide for you. A lot of us have already talked about how supportive they are, and I would just 100% agree with them. But in my career, they've just, there's a lot of opportunities within this department, and a lot of people think you need to go to bigger departments to get opportunities, but I'd like to share some of my opportunities with you in my 24 years here. So I started off in patrol, and it wasn't shortly thereafter that I became a field training officer. So I was training new recruits, which was very rewarding for me. Matter of fact, I trained Sergeant Watson, as a matter of fact.
Sure, yeah, he sure did.
And so it's very rewarding when you train an officer and you see them become so successful. And that time I got on SWAT. I was on SWAT for 12 years. And then I moved up to a general detective's position where I spent about 4 years working robbery and adult domestic violence. And a small stint of that, I worked sex assault against children. From there, I worked 4 years undercover narcotics, and then I moved over to undercover auto theft for about 4 years, and then I was promoted. So there's just a lot of opportunity within the department, and the only thing that's going to hold you back is yourselves, okay? The command staff here and the chief of police here is nothing but supportive. The city themselves are nothing but supportive. The benefits package and everything here is just really great, and you're just not going to really, the one thing I've always enjoyed over my 24 years here is you go to a bigger department, sometimes you're just a number, and here you truly know everybody, and you just really feel that family atmosphere. Just a quick story, I was involved in a pretty good motor vehicle accident last year where I shattered my pelvis and broke my femur, and I can't tell you the overwhelming support I got from not just my fellow coworkers, but the city in general, the chief of police. He called me once a week, see how I was doing, and you may get that in a bigger department, but I'm thinking that you probably get that more in a smaller department. And so overall, this is just a great place to work, and if you really want to be part of a smaller type family and do some really good police work and have a lot of good opportunities, this is probably a great place for you to work.
My name is Officer Hernandez, and I've been with the department 3 years. A normal day for me, what it looks like. So you wake up, take my kids to school, do the dad thing, come to the police department, leave my family to come to another family. This is really, I feel, as another family for me. from my detectives, all my sergeants, my fellow employees, my new coworkers. It's awesome being here. I put on a uniform every single day and I still feel like as excited as I did the first time. It never gets old. Every day it's different. It's never the same thing. It might be kind of like it, but it's not. It's very dynamic. It changes every single day. Sorry, I'm a little sick. But it's awesome. I mean, I love it. I don't see myself doing anything else. And working with these people here, they got my back, I got theirs, and we are one big happy family, I would say.
I am Detective Gisondo. I have been with the Wheat Ridge Police Department for about 8 years now. I'm a detective in the persons unit. I'm originally from France. I came to the US about 20 years ago now. When I started with the Wheat Ridge Police Department, I was single, and now 8 years later, I am married and I have 3 kids. So this is the newest one. Wheat Ridge has been a wonderful department to work with. They have been nothing but supportive of me and my goals, and having a family was one of these goals, and they have made the process really seamless and easy. I started originally, I was on patrol, and I became a detective about 4 years ago. And every time I had a kid, they have been wonderfully supportive. Everybody has picked up the workload for me and made it really easy to transition between having a family and coming to work. What I do now is I work in the persons unit, so that means I investigate crimes against children, crimes against domestic violence, assaults, that kind of stuff. So it's been wonderful, and I couldn't imagine being anywhere else besides here at Wheat Ridge.
All right, well, let's hear what Darren has to say, being the spouse of an officer.
You want to hear about my day? A lot of poopy diapers. I'm a stay-at-home dad while she does all the breadwinning. So, and my day is normally in the fetal position, crying. Yeah, there really isn't anything. We know how to support each other and how to back each other up. So, when she's on duty, I am taking care of the house and take care of the kids. When she's off duty, I make sure she checks it. I check in with her to see how she's doing, if her day was rough or not, if she needs to go over anything or debrief with me on anything. Other than that, on her days off, we try to decompress by making sure we cram in as much family time as possible.
Thank you, Darren. Okay, and then just a little bit about myself. And just so you are aware, yes, Scott was my FTO. However, I made sergeant before him, just so you know. So he trained me very well. I've been with the department going on 19 years now. It's the first department I've worked for, and like Scott said, there's so many different opportunities here. I did patrol for 4 years, and then I went in to the crime lab and became a crime scene investigator. I did that for a couple years, and then I was a detective for economic crime, so I did frauds, forgeries, identity thefts. Did that for several years, and then I was promoted to sergeant. As a sergeant, I managed a team on patrol, and then I did a year managing and supervising community services, and now I handle professional standards, which encompasses the hiring process, internal affairs. We also do award ceremonies, recruitment fairs, so I get a lot of stuff. And then just whatever little projects the chief might want me to handle. So I get hit with a lot of different things as being the professional standard sergeant. But I will tell you also, as every one of these team members have said, is you will get the most support in your career here at Wheat Ridge. When somebody goes through the FTO program, our program is not designed for failure. It is designed to succeed. So if you put the effort into it, you will be successful here at Wheat Ridge. So let me go ahead and we'll open it up to questions. So again, if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll get the mic to you. And again, you can address it to one person or it could be anybody. So who wants to go first? Somebody first, or I'll pick someone. Okay. This guy had his hand up first.
Okay, it's kind of, I've got plenty of questions. First one, how long the background investigation usually takes? The second one, for example, the addresses that we don't have phone numbers for. For example, like I rented few places from an actual person that I don't have the phone numbers actually. So when I was actually filling it up the application and stuff like that, the actual system was not allowing me to actually submit my application. And the fourth one, what's the latest age limit to become actually a police officer? And I've got, well, the fourth one, how fit do you have to be in order to actually pass the physical exam? And the fifth one, I have what happens if you are actually injured in physical exam, or for example, if you're actually going through the physical training and stuff like that. Is it going to be taken care of in terms of like, going to the doctors and stuff like that? How much time do we need to be able to actually pass the physical exam and stuff like that? I would really appreciate it.
You guys want, anybody up there want any of those, or do you want me to handle them? Which one you want to take?
So they give you strict instructions when you apply for when you do your packet. The key is not to, like what she said earlier, integrity. Don't lie about any part of your packet. You lie about any part of your packet, you're gone. Secondly is fill out as much as you can as possible. They understand you're not going to know your landlord 15 years ago who you spoke to 3 times, because the only time you saw him is you gave him a check. They get that. But the key is to put as much information as possible on that packet. The investigators are going to be assigned to you, because each sergeant or an investigator is going to get assigned to each person, and they go comb through your history. If they have any questions, don't make contact with you. Yes. So, but you have to be responsible on your end and fill out as much as possible. So that means you have to call. If you have to call the property manager for that, let's say that apartment complex, and they have to do some digging to figure out who it was, you do have to do that. Okay.
Okay. So the question is, do you have the name? Okay. So what I would do is, here's what is under the address, because we usually ask you to go back 10 years, okay? Put as much information as you can. If you have nothing, put the date you rented, and then what we will do then is when we see that on the application, we're going to question you a little further about it, okay? Mm-hmm. Correct. Right. Okay. And that's what I'm asking, that's what I'm explaining, is just put the dates that you had rented, and then when you get contacted by the background investigator, that is what you would explain to him, okay? A background is going to, once you start the background process, in which it's one of the last stages, a background can take anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, okay? Because we're going to dig into everything, all right? And like Mr. Bisrith mentioned, don't omit anything. Even if you think it may not be something, or you think it's minute, we don't need to know about it, let us make that determination. Because if you don't put something down and then we find out about it later, then it becomes an integrity piece, okay? So make sure that you put everything down, even if you think it means nothing, put it down. The other piece is that we do not have an age limit here at Wheat Ridge. Our philosophy is if you can handle the job and you can make it through the physical, then there's no reason why you cannot be a police officer with the city of Wheat Ridge. The physical itself is not an agility physical. It is a medical physical, and the only thing you have to do is you will get drug screened, okay? You have to do a treadmill test, you have to do pull-ups, and then you have to lift weight, and I believe it's 50 or 70 pounds. Millie, do you remember what it is? Okay, and then you do a dummy drag, all right? We've yet to have anybody not pass that, and we've yet to have anybody not get hurt. It's in a controlled environment at a medical facility. Does that answer your questions? Go ahead. It just changed, it's 22 weeks now. So you'll do 22 weeks at the police academy, and then you come back for a, is it 16 weeks FTO? 17-week FTO program. Okay. And then we had, ma'am, you had a question?
I was just wondering if one of the patrol officers would talk about their day. You know, we see the police officers in the cars, and I just wonder what the flow of a day, a normal day shift or night shift would be.
I'll take that. Hi. So, well, I work graveyards right now, so it really depends on the shift that you're on. But let me walk you through a normal day shift since I was there just last rotation. So you come in, you get dressed, you go to briefing, they read whatever they need to read, information bulletins. You get your equipment, you get your car, and you go on your day. It depends on the type of the day. Sometimes there's call pendings, meaning like somebody broke into their house and they need an officer to make a report, or somebody's car got broken into, so you get dispatched through different calls throughout the day. When there's not that many calls on the board for you to take, you have to be proactive, right? Because you're supposed to be out there helping the community. So we drive around, see if we can prevent any crime before they actually happen, because we want to be proactive, not reactive. So sometimes, you know, if we see something suspicious, we talk to people, we find different things like that, or we do traffic enforcement. So if somebody's speeding down Wadsworth going 65 miles an hour in a 40 mile per hour zone, then obviously we're going to do something about it. On our briefings, there is certain bulletins that, you know, the people call in and say, hey, can we do extra patrol at X, Y, and Z address between this time and this time? So we address those issues and we go and drive by between the hours that the people requested. But we're constantly doing something. When you guys see us parked somewhere, it's either because we're typing a report that needs to be done, or we are drinking some water and taking just a quick 2-minute break before we get sent down to a different call. But it's nonstop pretty much throughout the day. It's nonstop, go, 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 go. You finish one call, you're back in service, copy another call. You go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And it's constant doing stuff. So like you said, you see us driving around. Yeah, sometimes we're going to another call, or sometimes we're gonna bring documents back to the police department, tickets or attachments or whatever it is that we need to do. But we're always doing something, and it's a majority of calls. It could be somebody complaining that the neighbor music is playing too loud, and somebody else just got their car broken into, and more in-depth calls that, you know, they're complex to handle. But we're always doing something. Hope that answers your question.
One of the things to keep in mind is you have to remember is the patrol officer, the car is their office. So you're right, we get some people that will call to say, I want to know why an officer's just sitting there doing nothing. Well, they don't just sit there and do nothing. That's where they have to type. That's where they have to make their phone calls to do follow-up on their investigation. So that's their office. So that's where they eat lunch. That's where they eat their snacks. So I don't want to give the wrong impression, but, you know, somebody saying they're not doing anything, that's just kind of incorrect. So they are always doing something, okay? Who else has a question?
The opportunities that you guys can take, are those kind of given to you, or can you pick your path that you want to take past like patrol?
So it's a little bit of both. As a sergeant with the department, it's my job to try to help officers develop their career and the path that they want to take. So sometimes as a sergeant, I will identify a strength in an officer, and I will try to lead them in that direction. Maybe I see an officer that's really good in investigating crimes and taking those crimes to the next level and seeing the bigger picture. So I might try to lead them to take more trainings into a detective type position. Some officers I see that are maybe a little bit more tactical, and with my SWAT experience, I might lead them towards the SWAT team. However, it is also individual based. We have daily trainings that come out on the emails and whatnot. And if officers want to sign up for that training, they just put in a training request through their supervisor. their supervisor almost all the time, as long as staffing allows it, approves it, and then it goes up through the chain of command. One good thing about Wheat Ridge, I can tell you, is that we absolutely get probably the best training in the metro area. Our training budget's very big. The chief has made it a very big goal of his to make sure we're very well diversely trained, and we just have a very large training budget, and we get a lot of training. So does that answer your question, sir? Okay.
Anybody else want to take a stab at that one too, since we got some young officers?
I'll take a quick stab at this too. One thing that you'll notice is I went into this having no law enforcement experience and not knowing what to expect whatsoever. I was a little bit older already. This was a second career for me, so I went in not knowing what to expect. And only once you start into it, you will identify what you like and what draws you. To me, it was investigations. There was always investigations, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. To you, it might be something different, but you might not know yet what you want to do, but you'll find by working this job that you'll get drawn to something, and then the department will do everything that it can to help you in that path through trainings and things like that, and people are very supportive of those goals.
Anybody else?
I was actually going to say, very similar. When I was working in dispatch here, when we were in-house, I got to work with the SWAT team on their negotiations. I used to go out on their calls and stuff like that. So when I got into the patrol side of it, obviously, that's definitely something I want to do. And already they're starting to open up opportunities for me to start getting the training necessary. So when that opening comes along, I'm at a place that I can jump into that application process and be a competitor, because we also are with Lakewood in that. So not only am I going against other Wheat Ridge officers who might also want that similar position, and there might only be 1 or 2 openings, but we're also going against Lakewood as well. So this department definitely gives us the opportunities to get the training we need to be competitive in those sorts of things.
My question kind of follows up with his question. I'm under the assumption it's 3 years, is that correct, before you can rotate into a specialty? Or is it based on the officer who is, or the recruit, whatever you want to call it? I guess once you're through your field training and you're an official officer, let's say you have prior experience, you've been successful at a certain point of law enforcement, and have talents in a certain area that you're strong in. Let's say it's demonstrated here, but you're on patrol. Let's give an example of traffic. Can you go before that 3-year time period if there's an opening into traffic, given the situation where you do have past experience in law enforcement and you seem to really be geared towards that, or any other type of specialty as an example? That's one of my questions.
Sure. So the department does require 3 years in patrol for you to go into some type of a specialized unit. However, we have officers here that are 2- and 3-year officers that are on SWAT. So normally the way that works is if an application process opens, let's say for traffic, as you said, and the application pool only has officers that, let's say, from 0 to 3 years on, then they will make an exception for the younger officers to go into that specialized unit. Does that answer your question? Yes.
Who else has a question?
First, I'd like to say thank you for all of you being here. It's not often that you get an opportunity so early on to be able to meet with people that you would ideally be working with. My question primarily is, and it might be too personal, but I hope not. Most of you are wearing wedding rings. How would you say this most greatly impacted your spouses?
Well, sir, let's go talk out there for a minute, and I'll tell you the real story.
But you do want to get yourself in the right mindset as well. what I mean is, if there is some kind of a major incident involving your spouse, like an officer-involved shooting, I've heard of spouses turning on the officer, families turning on officers. You're going to want to get yourself prepared right now if you're going to be, that you need to be supportive under every circumstance. Other than that, you're going to want to make yourself available and open to the problems that kind of come with it, the stress that comes with it, and the time. 10-hour shifts plus the travel. So family time does shrink a lot when they're on duty. The days and holidays, yep. Holidays are gone. But other than that, I really want to stress you're not freaking out about whether they're going to get hurt and this and that. I don't think that there's much of a dramatic change in your life. If you could just get into the right mindset that everything's fine, and there's very likely nothing bad happen, that your life is already is going to continue forward.
I think for me, from my standpoint, is I think sometimes, and it's partly my personality, I tend to just kind of hold things in a little bit more. So being open to communicate, pretty much everything that's going on, and having him here to be responsive and just accepting of whatever it is wherever I'm at, whether it's I've had a really bad call and I'm having a hard time processing it, I can't sleep, and there's been times that I've gotten home from a swing shift when I was in training, and I just had to pick her up and hold her, and she's asleep, she has no idea, but and then I wake him up and say, hey, I need to process. So just having him be willing to be like, yeah, you can wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and let's talk about this, because like these guys got my back here, he's got my back at home. So
I do want to add in one thing, and this is going to be even more pertinent for a female police officer, but years ago the statistic was something around 95% divorce rate for men police officers and 99% divorce rate for female police officers. Knowing that, a very real subject that comes up and something that we often talk about at home is the chance of having extramarital affairs, police officers falling in love with each other, this and that. That's kind of the nature of the business. Knowing that ahead of time, as a spouse and as the officer, open communication. If you're not getting something out of the marriage, or you're finding that you're starting to have feelings for another officer or something like that, or as a spouse, when you kind of start feeling lonely and you're wanting to hook up with the neighbor. That's not anything going on with me. Anyway, no, but be open about this, because it's a very real danger. And of course, so the other things that could impact your marriage, finances, are going to compound even more if you guys are spending a lot of time away from each other and you're starting to find your needs met in somebody else.
Anybody else want to?
I think there's some subtle changes too. I'm going on 22 years of marriage. My wife's a cop for 27 years, so she understands it. She gets it. All she wants to know is if I'm getting overtime or not. She doesn't care how long I'm gone. But there are some subtle changes, I think, especially for newer officers and their spouses. I remember my first marriage that didn't last. My first wife, she didn't understand me carrying a gun off duty. Why do you always got to carry that gun off duty? And so there's some subtle changes there. And like Darren said too, she didn't get why. I know you're the young officer, but why do you always have to work Christmas and the holidays? And why are you on graveyards? Well, I do want to say that stuff improves with time. You get a little bit more seniority, and you're not always working the holidays, or you're not always working the night shift. The one good thing about Wheat Ridge here is we rotate shifts every 4 months, so we mandate that you bid off a shift once a year. So you can't work graveyards all year, or you can't work days all year, or whatever. So I think there's just some subtle changes, but I personally think, especially after being married for so long, that I think you make your relationship strong in other ways, and this is just a job like any other job, and your relationship's either strong or it's not. That's just my opinion.
Now, I don't want these stories to scare you, but they are real, okay? And the statistics that Darren mentioned, those are real, okay? Okay? We won't let him leave you. So, one of, and Darren, and they all mentioned it, right? It's down to communication, okay? You're not going to be the officer that has to work the holidays every year, but expect it probably your first couple years, okay? And I will tell you right now that graveyards with our department is a popular shift. So you may not get stuck with graveyards a lot. I would expect that for your first year. Expect swings for your first year. Days doesn't come along that often because we do have some more senior officers who really like day watch. But you don't have to, you will not get stuck with a year of graveyards because you can't bid a year of graveyards, okay? No, for your first year, you're probably going to have the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off. Okay, that's just the way it is. I had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off for the first 2 years, and I enjoyed it because I got everything done. Working weekends at this job is not bad. It's a pretty good gig. So it just comes down to communication. Just know your spouse will change a little bit, okay? That's normal because of what they see and what they deal with every day. They are going to change a little bit because they're seeing the stuff that nobody should see, all right? So expect that. If they come home and say, I just had a bad day, I just need to go off and be by myself, let them. Don't make them talk. They'll come to you and say what they want to talk about. But what I ask of you, though, is as a police officer, you have to have some self-awareness to know when you need to get some help. Asking for help as a police officer, whether it be for EAP with counseling, with some psychological help, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're human, okay? And if you don't get like that, that's when we start to worry that you don't have a heart left, okay? So those are not signs of weakness. I can guarantee you that there's certain things that happen in your career that you have to see a psychologist about, and that's any critical incident, officer-involved shooting. You're going to have 3 days off of paid leave, but you're going to be seeing a psychiatrist, psychologist, okay? So, Nellie, did you want to add something about the spouse part? And then who else did I have back here for a question?
I have a quick comment on that. As a female officer, my husband is not in law enforcement, and I met him after I became a police officer. And what helped for us as a couple, when I first started, when we first met, he came with me on a ton of ride-alongs. So he got to meet everybody in the department, just about, because he had the same kind of fears that what Darren talked about, like, you working with all those guys, you know, what are you doing, and all this. And I said, well, come with me and sit with me on a couple shifts, and you'll see. So he came with me. We did, you know, a bunch of ride-alongs together, and he met everybody, and it helped to put faces on names. So then when I would go home at the end of the day and I could talk to him about, today I went on this call with this person. You remember this guy? You met him? Oh, yeah, I remember him. And that really helped putting all that into perspective, like get him involved with the department, even if he doesn't have anything to do with law enforcement. I mean, this department is small enough inside that you can be a family of your own, and you'll get to know everyone, and your spouse will become part of the family, just like you are. So.
And just real quick, one program we haven't talked about, I just wanted to mention real quick, is one of the best programs I've ever seen since I've been at Wheat Ridge is we have a chaplain program here. And they are so supportive of us and our spouses, and they have cookouts for us. And again, like Nellie said, our spouses come, and we just all mingle together. It's not like, you know, a lot of jealousy and things like that. So our chaplain program here is just really, really supportive of us and helps with couples who may need help or whatever.
Also, we have family night, so the department, it's very inclusive, so we have family night, and so their families come over and we all hang out and we all talk, so it's very inclusive, so it's pretty good. You'll be fine.
And we can bring our babies to stuff.
Bring your babies, clearly.
We're back here.
I
was just wondering if you guys could elaborate on what the hours for Academy are and FTO. I know, do you switch off from days, swings, graves as you're doing FTO, and what does like hours at Academy look like? Are we talking 10 hours? We're talking 8 hours? 6 hours?
Go ahead, Josie. You're biting at the bit for this one. Go ahead.
Let me say something. So Academy starts at 8 a.m. technically, but you're going to get there at 7 or 7:15. Please don't get there at 7:30. At least that's going to give your coworkers anxiety because they want everybody to be there early. You get your uniform ready and you stand in formation at 7:45, and we start at 8 o'clock. Then the day goes on until 5 p.m., and that's Monday through Friday. And that's about the most stability you're going to have for the rest of your life. So the first 6 months of Academy, it's 8 to 5 every single day. You know exactly what classes you get. You know exactly what's going to happen. And they make sure you know. And it's a very, very structured schedule for Academy. So you don't do much at night. There's a couple instances in which we will work at night, and that's mainly when we go to the range to practice night shoot, as they like to call it. So we practice shooting our targets in the dark and some other exercises. Other than that, 8 to 5 every day. Then once you go into field training, you are at the mercy of your field trainer, and that sounds really dramatic, but it's just dependent on their schedule. So my first field trainer worked days, and she had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off, so that would be my schedule. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I would work a 10-hour shift. So our days start at 6 a.m., so I try to get there 5:15, try not to be there at 5:30 because that would give myself anxiety, but you get dressed, you try to be early for everything. In fact, be early for everything. And then our day ends at 4 p.m. So that's a 10-hour day, and that's 4 days a week. Now, I've done days for 2 phases, so for a total a little over 8 weeks now, and I'm about to go to Graves. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it because you can probably tell I love what I'm doing, and I think it's amazing. I get 1 day, and then I'm going to transition into Graves. So about 24 hours in which I'm going to try to stay up until about 4 in the morning and read a book and watch some movies. And then the next day, I start work at 9 p.m. and I work until 7 a.m. And, you know, 1 day off is a little rough, but I've reached out to my coworkers and sergeants and my mentor, who's a detective, and asked, any words of advice, what kind of energy drinks do I need to buy, all that kind of stuff. And everybody has had, given me the time of day to actually talk to me about it and help me out and tell me, buy one of those blinds that block out the light in your bedroom, and just giving me tips and tricks. And honestly, I was really nervous a couple weeks ago when I found out I was transitioning into Graves from day shift, but I feel like I have a really good support system, and I actually feel still a little nervous, but very ready. So even though you're going to have to be willing and able to transition quickly, that's also part of the job on a day-to-day basis. We have to transition our emotions, our energy levels, how we approach things. So it's just a different version of that.
And just to kind of tack on a little bit to that, the other thing is just be prepared, especially in FTO for some long days. Because you may be running call to call to call, but you still need your reports done at the end of the day. So you may be spending an hour or two after your shift's already ended, after everybody else has already gone home, and you're still having to bust out a couple of reports to get approved. Or you get that because you're new and you need the experience, you get the late domestic violence call, and those are easily 4-hour calls right there. So just being aware of that, having your family be aware, like, hey, just gonna let you know I'll be late. So keep that in mind.
And did we have another question?
What are some of the biggest struggles you guys see in new officers?
Geography. I can tell for experience when I first started, even though I was familiar with the area, you need to know where you're going. And you need to know where everything's at. Everything else gets, they teach you in the academy and you follow officers' laws and all that stuff. That's easy. Geography, nobody teaches you geography. They give you a map and here you go. you got to figure out where you're going and how to get there fast in case you need to. That, at least for me, was one of the biggest things, is geography. So you need to know where you're going, how to get there, not just one way, but different ways to get there.
I think one of the things I see as a supervisor is confidence. We tell them 100 times, we expect you to make mistakes in training. We expect you to make mistakes outside of training. We're all human, and we can't correct those mistakes unless you make them. But they're just so afraid to make the mistakes, and then it starts them on a spiral downhill for the day. And then they come in the next day and everything's fine. But I'd say confidence. It's really hard to build up the confidence of, now I'm contacting people and telling them what to do and making them sit down or whatever. And so I would say confidence is a big one in new people.
Go ahead.
I think one of the biggest skills that you have to have is communication skills. A lot of people get, like you said, they get really wound up in the situation. You'll go to a call, and A, you may not know what you're doing, or B, you don't know, like for example, you don't know how to get there. So it takes you 20 minutes when it should take the average person 3 minutes. And then it's just like what he's saying, it's a downward spiral. And then when you get to the call, they're expecting you to be confident. They're expecting you to know what's going on, and you may not have that. And then that's where the lack of communication breaks down. One of the biggest things, if you know your job, you know what you're doing, that kind of confidence builds up onto it. Another thing too is report writing. That's the one skill that you're gonna have doing this job. I worked for a sheriff's department before I came to Wheat Ridge, and they have a totally different skill set of writing reports compared to how reports are written here in Wheat Ridge. So if you know you're not a strong writer, if you know you lack that, and you want to do this job, make the effort to tune in those skills so that when you come out here, you're not making mistakes, you're being an asset as opposed to being a liability.
I will guarantee you that with the city of Wheat Ridge and the Wheat Ridge Police Department, you make a mistake and you own up to it, there's nothing that you can't get through. Okay, yeah, you might get a write-up or you might get a little piece of paper in your file, but you won't lose your job. But I will guarantee you, if you lie about anything or cover it up, you will lose your job in a heartbeat, okay? That is the one thing that we just can't deal with is a non-integrity piece. I've made a mistake. I've made several mistakes, but the point is you own up to it and you take whatever comes out of the end of it. You see officers up here, I guarantee you they've all made mistakes or they're going to, okay? We're human, all right? We don't expect officers to never make a mistake. It happens. It's how you deal with it and how you come out of that mistake, okay? The other thing is we're not looking for perfect people. We're looking for the right people, okay? We know that you've made mistakes even before you've got to this section of your career. The point is that you tell us about those mistakes and you let us determine whether or not it's a disqualifier. So again, it goes back to that integrity and just tell the truth piece, okay? Any other questions out here?
Hi, I'm a busy college student, and so my days are very limited. Is there like 3 or 4 things I can do to kind of hopefully prep or anything like that? Thank you.
I'm actually a full-time college student at Red Rocks. I'll say it again, this place here supports you. I was able to get my schedule to my supervisor. He went up and talked to Commander Hunt. They figured it out a way to where I could go do my classes, do my homework, but at the same time, focus on doing my job. And in no way, shape, or form, like you have to have the mindset that when you're at your job, you're at your job. But then it also falls on you to how it's time management and putting what's priority. Do you go out with your friends and have a drink and have a good time? Do you catch up on Game of Thrones season 7, or do you do your homework? So those are the responsibilities that you have to take. So if you want to have a career here and be a college student, it's definitely possible, 100% possible. But once again, it falls on you.
I think maybe one of the directions, correct me if I'm wrong, that you were going in is how to prepare for maybe the testing process. Was that correct? Okay. One thing you can do, and I encourage everybody, is to study, learn a lot about our city. We have a lot of information on our website. You can actually go into our website and learn about our mission statement, our vision, things like that. And each department that we have within the police department, how many officers, things like that. Those are kind of some of the questions that might come up later in the testing, might not. Population of the department, you might want to remember the chief's name, things like that. Those things might be important later down the road. But some of our testing is just more common sense. We really understand that during our testing, the way Sergeant Watson set it up is that we understand you're not police officers. We understand that you don't know the law, but we really set up our testing to just see how you think and to see if you have that critical thinking type thinking. Does that kind of answer your question, ma'am?
Any other questions out there?
So I know we have spoken about counseling, but what are other, how do you guys deal with secondary trauma? Because I know as police officers, you guys do see things that regular, normal civilians are not going to see. So how do you deal with secondary trauma if you have experienced secondary trauma?
You don't talk about it. No, you need to talk. Like, I've been in an incident when, stuff happens. So you talk about it, and then that's, days go by, you remember things, and it's like, oh, maybe I should talk about it. It's all about being open to your significant other, or, like Sergeant Watson said, somebody that can help you with. Just talk about it, work it through. Don't bury it down. I mean, you can only bury it down for so long, but it's all about how you talk and get it out there and to whoever you feel comfortable talking about it to and work it out. That's all. That's what I can say. It's just talk about it, and eventually it'll be fine.
I can add to that the department offers a ton of resources available to you, like counseling. There's a peer support group too, mentors, outside counseling, things like that is also available through the department, and it's highly encouraged. That people use it if need be.
And that's where it goes back to that self-awareness piece, that if you notice that you're starting to have signs of problems with dealing with something, then that's when you would just reach out to somebody and talk about it, or get into some counseling. Because that's what it's about. It's about staying healthy, because you can't help anybody else if you're not healthy. And again, it goes back to there's nothing wrong with asking for help, okay? I had a very traumatic incident, and the thing that it was a fatal accident up on the highway. And it wasn't so much the accident itself, it was that the gentleman who, the deceased, was on the phone talking to his wife at the time of the accident. And that just bugged me for months, that poor person on the other end of the phone. And it wasn't for the gentleman who died, it was for his loved ones. That was his last phone call. And he just was out of town on a business trip and got a flight a day early because he wanted to get home to his family. And here he is driving on the highway, and a semi crosses the lanes and takes him out. And he was on the phone with his wife. It was one of those things that bugged me. So you have to ask for help, and it's okay, all right? Anybody else have anything to add on that one before we move on? Anybody else with a question? Okay, so what I want to do is just take a minute, and where's Commander Hunt? Did he step out? Oh, figures. Leave it to a commander. But okay, so what I want to do is just kind of give you a little insight to, one, the process and how to plan for it, what to expect. So, and I don't know, do we have people in here who've already put in their initial application? Okay. So if you've already put in your initial application, this is going to help you out. If you're considering putting in an application, it's also going to help you out. So there's several phases. First of all, there's the initial application phase where you go into our website and you fill out the application. Okay, it's real simple, it's easy. When you send that to us, what we're looking for in that application, one is, do you have the required college credits, or do you have the required military piece to it? The other thing we look at is you go down a little bit further, and then there's a question about drugs, okay? We look at your drug usage. What did you tell us about it? Now, some people will say, well, I did some marijuana, I did some LSD, I did some shrooms. No, they tell us. If you give me a date of when you last used, marijuana is 12 months. So if you used marijuana within 12 months of your application, you're disqualified. There's got to be at least a 12-month separation in there, okay? If you used any other illegal drugs, such as mushrooms, you used somebody else's medication, you used somebody else's Adderall, just to stay awake for testing purposes, okay? And I kid you not, I see this all the time. You're disqualified, okay? Any illegal narcotic use is 60 months, okay? And that's a standard that we have set. It's a standard that we keep. Now, you may be sitting there saying, but wait a minute, marijuana's legal. It's not federal, okay? We follow both rules. So what we decided to do, instead of just disqualifying people for marijuana use who may not understand the federal side in law enforcement, we used to be 36 months when it was illegal. We went to 12 months when it was made legal. But if you're with 1 day within that 12 months, I'm going to kick you out, okay? We got to stick to this, okay? We have criteria. So that's what we look at. If you make it past those questions right there, then you move on into the process. And how many in here did the what we call the POBITS PHQ? Oh, isn't that fun? Yay! We get to hear all about everything else. This is now where we look at the integrity piece, your character, and we use that by everything in there. Now, we know that some people, again, have something in their closet. Let us determine whether it's significant enough that we can't deal with it, okay? Again, I'm gonna look at, one is, if you didn't give me dates on your initial drug usage, I'm gonna be looking at the dates in that one, okay? And if you fall within that 12-month or that 36 months, you're out, okay? Then we're gonna look at your legal history. What have you done? Things that will affect you, and it's not us, these are Colorado post requirements. If you have any felony conviction, whether it was as a juvenile or an adult, you're out, okay? And again, that's not us. That means you cannot become post-certified through the state of Colorado as a police officer. Now, let's say you did something as a juvenile, you got charged for a felony, but you weren't convicted, okay? That you can remain in the process, and then we do it case by case. What do we look at then if you did something like that? What did you learn from it? How old were you? Okay? Those are the things we take into consideration. We've all done things as a kid, all right? We're not going to hold it against you forever, okay? If you get a DUI, whether you're a juvenile or an adult, 5 years, 3 to 5 years minimum before we would even look at you. And actually, I've kicked 2 people out of the process so far this year for DUIs, recent DUIs, okay? So you're looking at least 3 years before you can even apply. And after that, then it's up to the chief, okay? But I would keep you in if you had a DUI 3 years ago. I'd keep you in. We're going to look at your employment history. How many times were you written up? What were you written up for? And because we ask you those questions. And this may be getting a little sensitive too, but we're going to look at how you answered the sexual conduct questions, okay? We have to make sure that when we're hiring people, we're hiring the best. We're hiring those that might have a little bit of a history, but they learned from it, okay? That's the piece that's going to move you on, is what are you doing about what you did, okay? Those are the big key things, is the legal, financial. If you've been turned over to a collection agency or you're currently in bankruptcy, if you're currently in bankruptcy, you're out of the process. And that's just until you get that bankruptcy finished, okay? It doesn't keep you from being a police officer, but you have to understand that when we hire somebody, we're looking for ethical people, and how can we tell citizens that we hired somebody currently in bankruptcy? Got to get that taken care of. We understand that people will have problems financial, and what we see a lot of things that were turned over to collection were medical bills. We don't hold that against you. That won't throw you out of the process, okay? But tell us about it so we can make that determination. So those are the big key things on the PHQ that can get you thrown out of the process. If you make it through the PHQ, then you're going to get an invite to take what we call our frontline ergo test. That's the test that determines your suitability as a police officer. And that ranges from customer service to do you show signs of aggression, what's your writing skills, what's your memory skills, and it's just like general math, like can you count up if somebody had stuff stolen, can you add everything together? On that ergo, you have to score at least an 80 or above to move on. And the reason we picked the 80 is because that's what you have to do in the academy. If you're in the academy, you have to maintain an 80 or above. So that's where we do the cutoff score. If you pass that, you're going to move on to what we call our oral boards. Now, did Commander Hunt come back in? Mind stepping up here? So let's talk a little bit real quick here about the oral board, okay? Because this is where you're going to sit with a panel, and a lot of the panel is going to be people just like this panel up here from all different aspects, okay? And we're going to be asking you questions. And those questions, there's really not a right or a wrong answer on these types of questions. We want to see what is your thought process. How can you take a problem, think it through, and come to some sort of a conclusion, a logical conclusion. Doesn't have to be what I would do, because what I would do would be different than each one of these officers up here. So we're just gauging you on you. When you do the oral board, you are not ranked or scored against anybody else on that interview. It's just you. Okay, so you're the only person that you have to please on that. Well, you got to please the board too, but. So I'm going to have Commander Hunt tell you just a little bit actually about the oral board process and things that you can do to make yourself successful, okay?
Good evening. The oral board process. It's a process to get to know who you are as a person, what you've done to prepare yourself. And I think a lot of times people don't understand that you're going to be sitting in front of a panel and they want to know who you are, what you've done. When we talk about what can I do to prepare myself, we brought up go on ride-alongs. One of the things, and as you see from Sergeant Watson's description, it's about not only what have you done to prepare yourself, but what have you done to keep yourself out of those pitfalls that will wash you out from the process. But really, there's a series of questions you need to know. But first and foremost, if you're going to show up to meet your significant other's parents and ask for a hand in marriage, would you want to show up in jeans, cut-off T-shirts, a hat? No. You want to look your best. And I think a lot of times there's people that come in and you have this one chance to make a first impression. So you want to wear a suit. You want to look the part. You want to get on the website and understand what Wheat Ridge is. You can pick up this flyer right here. And the flyer goes through what is Wheat Ridge. And if you look on the back, it's got our mission statement, core values. It's got the pay. It tells you about what the possible assignments are, SWAT, crisis negotiation. Know about the department. Because what we're trying to do is evaluate who you are as a person and how bad do you want the job. You can get on websites out there and they will tell you some of the questions and they will give you the thought process behind what it is we're looking for. We're not looking for you to have the exact answers because we're going to send you to the academy. But we're going to want to know who you are. What have you done to prepare yourself? Have you gone to college? Start practicing some of these things in your head. Get your spouse, a family member, a brother, father, mother, and talk in front of them. Because you'll be able to smooth some of those questions out so that when you're nervous in front of this panel, it comes out. But realize this, you know you, they don't know you. So if you miss something that you thought was absolutely important and critical, they'll never know you forgot it. So really go through that process, get on the internet, learn about the department, learn about the questions that they're going to ask you. What have you done to prepare yourself to be a police officer? Why should we hire you? Have you ever had a conflict between an employee, and how did you handle it? Those are some of the things that are just really canned answers through any interview that you go through. But if you practice them and you rehearse them and you smooth out the nervousness, then you're going to come in here and you're going to be able to knock it out of the park, and they're going to go, okay, he's personable. Look people in the eye. If you are sitting there and you're not communicating with somebody, then we wonder, can you communicate with somebody out on the street? Can you talk to them? And for the younger crowd that are out there and like to text everything, that is probably one of the biggest hurdles that we see is some of the younger people that are right out of college, that everything is done in the text. Well, we don't, in the real world as a police officer, it's face-to-face. Tell me about your problem. How can I help you? What is it that I can do for you? What can you do for me? So that communication piece is probably one of the most important things. So if you want to prepare yourself, get out there and be involved in some of these volunteer groups, the support groups that will allow you to have that contact and understand the community that you're going to be out there serving. I grew up in Southwest Denver, a little bit different than here. But growing up in a diverse community, I learned early on as a police officer, how can I communicate with them? I learned Spanish, so I now speak Spanish. So those are some of the things that communication is really the cornerstone of passing an oral board and being a successful police officer. So. So those of you that are looking at being a police officer that want to go through the process, the majority of you probably already know somebody that's in law enforcement. Is that correct? That's probably one of the first steps that you should take, is to reach out to that person and ask them, what is the oral board like? What are some of the questions that they're going to ask me? Because I can tell you that even though I started law enforcement 32 years ago, one of the questions that I was asked on my oral board as a 22-year-old Marine was one of the questions that was actually used here in Wheat Ridge. So they haven't really changed. The roadmap to the test is about the same. An interview is an interview. So go out there and really utilize those people that you have in your life that may have some knowledge about it. Or go on that ride along where you can make a connection with a police officer and say, hey, when you did your oral board, what are they looking for? You know, what are some of the questions that you're asking? And like I said, the internet is a great thing. I had a family member, a son, that tested here, and write down what it is, the department specific, what they're looking for, what their mission statements are, and then go out there and do a ride-along with them and make connections with the people. Because you know what? There's 82 officers here, 42 in patrol. If you come out, chances are maybe that person who you connected with is going to be on your oral board. So, you know, take every opportunity you can. Any questions?
One of the things that I do want to mention here, yeah. We're looking at 4 to 6. Yeah. So chances are good. Yes, ma'am. So we usually don't give the questions prior to the oral board, but what we are looking at this year is that you will have a copy in front of you so you can read along with the panel, because they will read it to you. So there will be a copy, but you don't get them ahead of time, okay? There's always one question at the very end of the oral board, and it just amazes me how people will say, no, I don't have anything else to add, because we will ask you, anything else you want to add? That is your opportunity to shine. That is your opportunity to sell yourself. Don't miss out on that opportunity, because that's the last thing we're going to be hearing from you, okay? That is where you get to wrap it up and punch it and tell us everything about yourself that you want us to know. Even if it's something that you're repeating, so say you might have answered something like that in the question, tell it to us again. That is your opportunity to shine. And like Millie said, you've got to be clear and concise in your answers. Know your answers, okay? Practice some of these, because I can guarantee you they're going to ask you, just like the commander said, what'd you do to prepare for this? Why should we hire someone like you? That should just come off your tongue so easy, because you know you, okay? It just amazes me, though, that how many people you get that just start stumbling. So practice certain canned answers, okay? Know yourself. Know why you're doing what you're doing. Think about it. And it's okay to take a minute, because when they give you the question, because you are going to have a couple scenario-based questions, okay? And again, we understand you haven't been in law enforcement, so it's not that we're looking for the law enforcement answer. We just want to see your critical thinking and how you're going to get from A to B, okay? Because there's a lot of ways to go from A to B. Mm-hmm.
Their values differently. Know the definition of that particular organization's values, okay? If the word is integrity, everybody or every organization can define integrity a little differently, okay? So make sure you know what that organization has defined it as. Respect is another one, okay?
customer service is another one. How did that agency define it? And incorporate that in your answer. The other thing, if I ask you why you want to be a police officer, please don't tell me you wanted to be a police officer since you were 2. Tell me what it is about why today you want to be a police officer. You might have started off at age 2 wanting to be a police officer, but how did that develop? How did that grow? What has changed over your lifetime to show me at age 2 and I still want to be that police officer? Okay?
You guys have anything to add about the oral board?
Just, there's a ton of resources out there. Go to Amazon. Seriously. Just, there are a ton of resources that'll help you through an oral board. Use them.
So then after the oral board, if you pass the oral board, then you will get a notice from Miss Millie, and we will give you a conditional job offer, okay? Now, that conditional job offer is dependent upon you completing and passing the rest of the process. The rest of the process after that is a polygraph. So you're going to take a polygraph test. You're going to take a psychological test. And you pass those 2, you go to the background phase, okay? And that's where your entire packet, so from the oral board, your initial app, any attachments you've put with that, your PHQ, it goes to the background investigator. And then they're going to start digging into your background. When you get contacted by that background investigator that he is starting, or you hear that you passed the psych, you passed the polygraph, you've got to want to start letting people know, hey, I'm moving on to the background phase. If you get phone calls, please answer them. One of the things that hurts candidates is that some of their references don't return our phone calls. Not that that is going to make or break your career, but it makes things a little difficult for us then to be able to, one is either confirm or refute something that has come up, okay? Let your people know, hey, you're going to be getting a phone call. The background investigator will contact you saying, hey, hi, I'm so-and-so with Wheat Ridge. I'm conducting your background. Let them know that's the person that's going to be calling your references. When you pass the oral board, we immediately send out questionnaires to anybody you've listed in your PHQ as a reference. So we email that to them, and then we start gathering that stuff from that point on, okay? So then we start reaching out. When you find out that you've passed, your oral board, your psych, and your polygraph, you're in the background, okay? And again, that background can take 2 to 3 weeks. It can take several phone calls, several appointments with you and your background investigator, all right? Unfortunately, those take time, okay? And you might have to meet up with people. I don't know how many times in the last process we had background investigator tell me that they're having a hard time getting a hold of the applicant. Well, guess what? We only try a couple times, and if the applicant isn't calling us back, we got people who want this job. We're going to move on, and you will be disqualified, okay? We can't wait forever for somebody to contact their background investigator, so make sure you're returning those phone calls, okay? Because you don't want to be that person that gets disqualified just because lack of communication, okay? Make sure you stay in contact with them. Now, when we get your background back, I go through all the backgrounds and I look at everything that our investigators collected. And then we start looking at it, and this is where you now start getting compared to other people, all right? So let's say we have 2 exact candidates who are identical in everything, except one person got a DUI, and now I've only got 1 slot left to fill. Who do you think's going to get that slot? Person without the DUI. Okay? So that's when it comes to that close, that's when we start looking at the little differences, subtle differences in people. Okay? So just keep that in mind. After we get everything and we look at things, if we think then that you are suitable and you fit what Wheat Ridge is looking for, you will be recommended for an interview with the chief of police. That is a one-on-one interview that takes place, And that is where you get to sell yourself to the chief of police, because he's the one that makes the final decision. Okay? That's a time when you really want to be on your game, is when you sit down with him. It'll be usually him and either a commander or a division chief. And the chief has all kinds of questions, and I wish I could help you on what he's going to ask you, because he changes, all right? But you can almost be guaranteed what have you done to prepare for this? What do you know about the city? What do you know? Which one of our core values do you think is the most important? Those are ones I can almost guarantee will be there, because he's very big on the organization and what do you know about us, okay? If you pass the chief's interview, you will get a phone call or an email from Millie saying, congratulations, here's your formal job offer. The formal job offer, however, is contingent upon you passing the medical exam and the drug screen. If you pass those two things, then you're going to the academy. Okay? Like I said, we're looking at right now 4 to 6. That can always change because we've got a couple officers who are looking at retirement. So that number could change a little bit. But one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that you stand out. So when you're with the oral board or you're with the chief, you stand out, okay? That's the process. I know it takes a long time, but you've got to be patient with it. And I don't mind people calling me saying, hey, how's the process going? But really, if you think about it, no news just means no news, okay? It's not good, it's not bad, it's just we're waiting on information. So no news just means no news, okay? Again, I'm happy to take a phone call. But all I can tell you is, well, you're still in this process or we're waiting on information, okay? Any other questions that you guys might have before we start the goodies and let you mingle with people and ask anything else you want to ask, one-on-one questions or anything? Yes, sir. Okay. Right. I thought it was the 18th. I think it's the 18th, because because the reason why, because next week is our last week of in-service. So we don't really do anything during in-service. So I believe the first batch will be the week of the 18th, and we have 3 or 4 days set aside for that. So one of the things that we do is when we do the testing, we do things in batches. All right, because it would just drive us crazy if I looked at one application, I approve it, I send it to Millie, and she does everything with one. So we wait till we have a batch, okay, and that batch number is usually about 20, 25. And then we move a group forward. So as soon as she gets the first test results, so if you've already taken the test, then we will get the results. We'll download the results, like Millie says, by the end of the week, and then we'll start setting up those oral boards. Yes, it's a cumulative. Thank you. Yeah, so it's everything together. So I like to think of it as a football game. There's different quarters. You might not done really well in one aspect, but you did extremely well in another, so it brought you up. So it's the overall score. 80 or above. You're good to go. Unless we find out something else during this little process. Do we need to talk offline? Just asking. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So here's how it'll work. The police academy usually, and I'm not going to say all the time, but usually we'll start the Monday after the 4th of July. So what we do is you come in the week before the academy starts for what we call the pre-academy orientation. That's where we get you your uniforms, because you got to have a certain set of uniforms for the academy. So we get you your uniforms, we get you everything you need, we get you into the system, onto the payroll, start your benefits. So it takes a week to get all that done, and then you start the academy. Now, the one thing that I want to mention to you, if you're not aware of this, is that we pay for your academy, so that's $6,000 that we're putting into your future. Okay, the academy is $6,000. We buy all your uniforms, all your leather gear, everything. The only thing you have to purchase is your t-shirts, your socks, your shoes, your firearm, and your flashlight. Okay, so those are things you will have to purchase on your own. Other than that, we pay for everything else. Okay. In return, you have to sign an agreement that you will stay with Wheat Ridge at least 2 years. If you don't fulfill that 2 years, then the city can ask for a certain percentage of your tuition back. Okay, so you want to make sure that you abide by that. We've only had a couple people that haven't abided by that. I came in on that program, and here I am almost 19 years later. Okay, 2 years is really nothing when you think about it. Any other questions on that?
It also talks about the agreement. And look at this, we provided you with our vision, our mission, our core values. This is yours to keep, okay? We're also asking you to complete out a survey to let us know how we did tonight. We are going to continue to do these programs, but we need your feedback. So if you could provide that, that would be wonderful. We have pins hanging around.
Okay. So one last thing that I'd like to mention here is some people are here tonight to learn. You get some information and you think to yourself, well, maybe I'm not really cut out for the officer type, but I really want a job in law enforcement. Okay. There's so many different things you can do in law enforcement without being a sworn officer. Like Josh says, you can be a non-sworn, you can do CSOs. We have positions with our records department. We have positions come up with administrative assistants. But there's also another opportunity out there. We have a volunteer program that you can volunteer with. And a lot of our volunteers also work with our Victims Advocate. We call it VOI, Victims Advocate Incorporated. So they go out and they work with victims, all right? That is another great rewarding position you can do if you're still kind of on the fence of, well, I'm not really sure I want to be an officer, but I want to do something. Victims Advocate really is a section of law enforcement that is understaffed, and we need people in. So that's another area if you just kind of want to start getting your foot wet to see how you think you do, especially with the self-awareness piece of that. That's something else you can do, and we can always get you information with victims outreach and how you can get involved with that. But that's another great rewarding area of law enforcement. So always keep a mind on our website. Look there. If you miss out on this process, and Millie, when does it close? March 29th? Okay. So there's still quite a bit of time. But if during this process you fail to hit the deadline, that's not a problem. We've always got other positions open up. And like Josh says, just get in with the city and we will make you successful in whatever career field you're looking for. Okay? So if there's no other questions, go ahead and have some refreshments. We have some tables set up over here. We've got our CSO table. So if you're looking for a non-sworn position, we do have some positions open up in our community services. Center table here is patrol detectives, and on this end table we'll have it's some SWAT gear that you guys can look at. And be careful, don't touch some of the stuff because it's real. Ask the SWATer on the other side before you touch anything because everything's live. We don't want to have any accidents where we're having to call some additional people. So go ahead and mingle. I'm available. Anyone available, people at the table are available. So we are here for you. Ask whatever questions you like. And I just want to thank you all for being here tonight and taking that first step in your career. Amazing opportunities here with Wheat Ridge. So take us on it.